Big D Entertainment, in association with Dipsy Doodle Productions, presents The Dave Holly Hour. Brought to you by TJS Ceramics, Posh Boutique in the Bridges at 57th, The Sky in T, XL Chiropractic, Quality Nails, Jesse Moffitt Entertainment, and Sonny's Pizzeria. The Dave Holly Hour features Sioux Empire arts and entertainment conversations. A true lover of arts, entertainment, good food, and fun times, including an occasional Jack Daniels. Okay, so a few Jack Daniels. Here he is, Dave Holly.
Thank you, Zach. Look forward to seeing you perform improv tomorrow night. Here we are at the turnaround, halfway, the circumference of a circle, because we're going to do episode 180. And a fine one it is. In a few minutes, we talk with jazz musician Alexander Olsen. Then later in the show, those ever busy, ever entertaining, and downright cute couple, Amy and Matt Morrison, join us. Amy taking on a big new venture. Plus, we'll tell you who or what gets this week's honorable mention, as well as choose another winner of Pizza with a Podcaster. But first, you know the drill. Let's pop the cork on this bubbly little show.
Time to grab your favorite beverage, lift it high, and toast it to being Thursday, a.k.a. Weekend Eve.
Hey, the weekend isn't around the corner, it's here!
So long, hump day in your frumpy way. We say hello to Thursdays with opening nights. The weekend is near and we can see the bright lights. Yes, Thursday, you're so hearty, we can't wait for Friday, so a day early, we start the party.
Whatever you're deciding to toast with, no matter what your beverage is, lift them high to the class of 2023. Be it high school or university, it's a step along your journey of life. You've earned your congratulations as well as your tassels. Just be safe so that you can make sure you move on to your next adventure, your next part of that journey of life. Congratulations, class of 2023. The Weekend Eve Toast is brought to you by The Sky in T. The Sky provides all caps fun, and that best had with friends. Have fun playing darts, shooting pool, have fun listening to great live music from local musicians, have fun singing at karaoke, and have fun testing your knowledge at trivia. Maybe you need some room to hold a company party. You got a big benefit going on or something? Well, the Sky's got that big back room, so you can get in there. No matter what's going on at the Sky, it's local and it's lively. It's time to choose a lucky winner of Pizza with a Podcaster. Everyone that follows the Dave Holly Hour on Facebook or Instagram is automatically entered to win a free pizza from Sonny's Pizzeria. We pick a winner each week, and this week we say congratulations to Mike Huber. We'll be in touch with you, Mike, to get you all set up with some jowl-dropping, show-stopping thin crust pizza. Pizza with a Podcaster is brought to you by Sonny's Pizzeria, right across from USF at 26th and Waltz, and Sonny's at 81 on South Phillips. Check out the very fun and incredibly flavorful menu online, sonnyspizzeria.com. Honorable mention. What has made Dave smile this past week? Well, we were able to get away for a weekend, so didn't get any local entertainment in. But now this weekend, tonight at the Icon, it's the Midtown Coffee Radio Hour. That show has a great host and some very, very talented musicians. Tomorrow night at the Icon, it's Improv Falls. And Saturday night, my love and I will finally get to Worthing for Old Town Dinner Theater's production of The Movie Game. Now, what's great about this triple header is all of these shows have great casts, the great majority of them being friends, and we'll be enjoying them with friends. So honorable mention to the triple threat this weekend of local entertainment. Later in the show, one of the cutest couples in local showbiz, Amy and Matt Morrison. Up next, jazz musician Alexander Olsen on the show for the first time on the Dave Holly Hour.
Check out the new ceramic studio in Sioux Falls. Conveniently located off Kiwanis Avenue on 5th Street. TJS Ceramics. We have thousands of classic vintage ceramic mold items and several new items too. TJS Ceramics offers classes through the Sioux Falls Community Education Program and special open studio nights every Thursday evening. Bisque, studio time, or finished custom items are available. Visit TJS Ceramics Studio in Sioux Falls today.
Helping women feel empowered and confident is what Posh Boutique at the Bridges at 57th does, while supplying high-quality clothing that fits your lifestyle, personality, and price point. Whether you want comfy and cozy, casual attire, or something for a special occasion, Posh provides quality, selection, and value. They carry sizes extra small to 3X and have something appropriate for any age. Feel empowered and get confident. Posh Boutique at the Bridges at 57th.
Dr. Perry Langston and Dr. Corey Tooney know excellence is in you. That's why they provide you with excellent care at Exo Chiropractic, improving your overall health in spirit, body, mind, and will. Get results the natural way. Arrange a consultation, 605-332-9235 or exokairos.com. Excellent care for excellent people. Exo Chiropractic, located at 4309 South Racket Drive in Sioux Falls.
Support the Dave Holly Hour in a very easy way. Buy Dave a cup of coffee by clicking the cup in the lower left corner of www.davehollyhour.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It is always a pleasure to have you along. You know what I love to say because I start off with it's always a pleasure to talk Sioux Empire art and entertainment, and always a great pleasure to have a new guest along. Alexander Olsen, how are you?
I'm excellent.
Glad to hear that. I know you're excellent because I have witnessed your excellenceness.
Thank you.
I didn't want to say excellency since we just crowned a king.
Yeah. Right?
The Uncalculated Jazz Cooperative. I have seen you a couple of times now down at Monk's. And I had met you one time, I think, prior to that. Mm-hmm. But I had not had the fortune of seeing you play. And so, of course, Al Bourbon's there, and my good friend Joel Shotwell, and my even better friend Ruben Rodriguez, who brings tacos when he comes over.
All right. Yeah.
Had told me about it. And so I go down there, and it blew me away.
Thank you. Awesome.
What do you call the form of jazz that those four of you perform?
Ooh. I'd probably describe it as sort of high energy, funk-based jazz. And it's like reimagined standards and then a handful of sort of deep cut funk tunes from that era. And the ballads, it's just high energy, intense, funk-based or groove-based jazz.
So we'll go with that for the technical answer, because all I could think of it after I saw it was, damn, that was hot.
Yeah.
So I've just been referring what I tell people about it. It's hot jazz. It's just hot.
Yeah.
Because, you go around, and I'm a jazz lover, and so I try to take in as much as I can. And I love, you're going to get the standards. You're going to get the things that somebody will maybe even involve a crooner from time to time, or you get the big band. I love it all and so forth. And when I was in high school, Spyro Gyra was a big group.
Yeah.
Weather Report, and groups like that. And I think we kind of referred to it as Triple Z jazz, because it was a little upbeat from what we grew up thinking of, just jazz with Dave Brubeck, etc. And it's like, okay, so this, though, was just blowing my mind.
Cool.
When I saw it the first time. And so then as soon as we saw that it was going to be back, it's like, well, we got to go again.
Right. Yeah.
When did you start playing?
I started when I was 5 years old, taking lessons formally.
Okay.
And I got put at University of Sioux Falls with the director of piano studies there when I was just about 8 years old. And I studied with her all the way from 8 years old up through high school. And then prior to that, even prior to starting lessons at, being 5 years old, my older brother played as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 5 years older than me. So when he would practice, my parents would let me sit on his shoulders when I was still that way. So I would sit on his shoulders while he was practicing and going through. So I had sort of a bird's eye view. And, a couple times a week, I would just hang out on his shoulders and watch him play and try to figure out what the heck was going on because I was fascinated by it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was one of those things where I was always standing next to him, sort of bugging him at the piano, being like, how do you do that? What are you doing? And then eventually I'm like sitting on the bench next to him, and then there's not enough room on the bench. He's like, well, you just sit on my shoulders. You weigh, 40 pounds. It's not that big of a deal. So that was pretty cool. That was how I got exposed to it at first. And, I went to the Augie music program for about a year and a half. And then I completely switched tracks and was doing like a pre-law program. And I went and worked out in Washington, D.C. and became pretty quickly apparent that that wasn't quite the track that I was on, because I was the intern that was a musician. So even in the most prestigious government, as high as you can get on a government federal level, it was like, oh, that's the musician. I wasn't the politician. Right. I wasn't the up and coming politician. It was like, we have this intern who's an awesome musician. You got to check it out. So I was like, I think I might have jumped the tracks a little bit too early there, and went back to playing music. And
did you go back to school then and start taking up music more in terms of courses and so forth, or were you pretty well versed by that point?
I was pretty well versed by that point. I was seeking out a lot of my own materials, and I was purchasing a bunch of textbooks because, at that time, YouTube didn't have the huge library of amazing teachers it does now.
Yeah.
And, I just ended up studying and garnering as much as I could from, the greats that came before us and put it in these nice textbooks. And it was a different way of learning. And then I had been studying classical, and that's kind of why I think it didn't work quite right when I was doing like formal education. So I had all my classical technique figured out, and I was playing competition pieces and, spending 6-7 hours a day in a practice room at Augie. And there were beautiful practice rooms and facilities, and they had awesome instruments and things like that, but it was a lonely endeavor. Mm-hmm. And sort of branching out and being able to play music with my friends was an epiphany, and it became an interactive conversational process versus kind of making a sculpture for 6 months at a time and then playing the pieces, typically to less than 15 people,
right?
20, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour of memorized pieces. And it took a toll on me sitting in the practice room, and it was it was a tough realization to come to that I couldn't quite make my way in classical like that, because I did love playing it, but to be at that level, and there's some people who seems like they love that sort of work and that alone time, and that's part of their creative process. But I couldn't find a ton of creativity in you were not
just
a dark practice room, but an isolated practice room.
Right.
Yeah. So it was playing classical to me, what it sort of felt like was, and some of the guys laugh at this, it was like, it felt like you were driving a go-kart on an empty track by yourself. And then all of a sudden you start jamming with your friends and other musicians and meeting people, and all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 other people, and you're all zipping around and like working on turns and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you should try this right here. Or it's like, oh yeah, so it was a total shift in sort of my philosophy, because I had become really jaded and burnt out, honestly, on
the classical stuff. So.
And it's amazing stuff, but it really wore on me. It wasn't a great fit, but it got me some awesome technique and some insight into jazz, where started analyzing pieces and things like that. And a lot of the jazz improv, I think, gets a little bit of a misnomer, because it feels a lot more like live composing, where you have a pretty strict set of rules you're operating in.
Mm-hmm.
And it can really go, if you're not careful, it can really go over some people's heads, and you can sort of lose people in the process, depending on what, techniques, mechanisms, theoretical ideas you're using. But yeah, it was, so it feels like live composing. And I think that, you mentioned Joel, and he composes, and he just released that album and released some albums with the JAS, and he did some brilliant work on that. And, sort of jazz improv feels like composing while you're falling down a flight of stairs or something like that.
I love that term, though, live composing.
Yeah.
And because I guess, I always say, well, the great thing about jazz is you get all this improv. Somebody just takes off, and it always looks like you just got into a groove.
Yeah.
And, it's just happening. And it's you're the lucky one that has the talent to be able to be doing that, and the audience gets to enjoy that talent and that groove that you happen to hit. I mean, because when you start that, and again, I love this, calling it live composing.
Mm-hmm.
What hits first? Is there a particular note, a chord, or just a thought that you want to take off with?
Yeah, so there's usually a little bit of a structure that's like a jumping off point. And then, that's sort of the airplane that takes you up to altitude, and then you sort of jump out with your parachute on and try to, navigate your way back down to earth somehow. But yeah, it becomes conversational, and after a while the lines start to blur between you and the instrument, where if you're comfortable and you are surrounded by musicians that you trust, it begins to be really conversational. And it's you'll hear little sort of micro expressions from the other players, and then that can strike an idea up, and it can go in any direction based on what someone kind of dropped into the bucket. And then it's a really beautiful process, and being able to sort of converse and bounce ideas off of other musicians, and then even just resonating with other musicians when they have an idea. And if you play with them long enough, you sort of gain this ESP where you sort of know where they're going before they go, but usually they're giving you clues.
Right.
And then you can follow them down the rabbit hole and make it back out. Sometimes not, but those are sort of the funny moments where you'll see us kind of laugh at each other and be like, oh, well, that didn't quite work. Or, there was something there and it kind of floated away or something like that. So there's an element of danger to it as well, where you're reading into your players and you're sort of taking these almost microscopic interactions, and they sort of spark ideas in everyone's heads. And then that's when it really starts to combust, is when everyone's listening really closely to each other. And it doesn't seem like that on stage because we're all so involved in our instruments. But when you hit that stride, and after you're warmed up, you're really tuned up to almost any audio input. So sometimes, like, the dinner gigs and stuff like that are fun, but some of the musicians who are really dialed in, it's like you can hear a fork hit a plate from the back of the room at the wrong moment. It can kind of zap you out of, it's like flash photography or something. So there's a certain element to
the use of strobes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's really conversational, and a lot of the ideas come from the players around you, which is cool, because that way you're almost never running out of ideas. And playing solo, even just improvising solo, you'd be surprised how quickly you run out of ideas. But then you add in 3 or 4 of your friends that you've played a lot with, that you trust, that you're like resonating really well with. There's like almost infinite possibilities. 4 minds working all at the same time, you can come up with some really, really awesome stuff. So,
and the other thing is, even if you play 2 nights in a row, you play the same set. It's going to be different every night too.
Yeah, it always feels slightly different. You could play the same tune and it would feel just a little bit different and be like, oh, I liked where that one went. And sometimes some of the tunes fall flat if the feeling isn't quite there. And then other nights you could play the same tune. It could be the next night and be like, wow, that's what that tune's supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up playing the piano, playing the 88s. What point did you switch over and all of a sudden go, hey, this key stuff and, being hooked up to an amp, this is all pretty cool?
Yeah. It was probably... I had purchased a digital piano with the intent of it being like a practice tool for classical. It had like fully weighted keys. It was a Kurzweil, and that was kind of the cutting edge keyboard at the time. And it just happened to have some other sounds on it with like the Rhodes and the clavinet and the Wurlitzer and the Hammond. And I had really gotten into, like, a huge inspiration for me at the time was like Medeski, Martin, and Wood. So like John Medeski, keyboard player in that, just brilliant player. And he had this, you'd watch the videos of them performing and he had 8 or 9 different keyboards around. He's always spinning around in his stool and playing multiple keyboards at the same time. I was like, well, that looks like a lot of fun and it sounds way cooler than, being tied to just the piano sounds. So I kind of just stumbled on it and started experimenting with it, and all of those instruments kind of lend themselves to different styles of comping and like leading solos, and they respond differently to rhythm. Like a clavinet's more percussive. The Rhodes is more chimey than the Wurlitzer. So each of those instruments kind of take on a certain character in your playing. So then you have access on some of this new stuff to just, infinite palettes of characters. And that can get really creative in the moment, because all of a sudden you'll just be like, oh, this would sound good here. And you'll flip to it and be like, oh, that worked. Or again, sometimes it doesn't, Yeah.
How many keys do you play on that you take to a gig?
It depends on the gig. So if it's kind of like a one-off gig and it's in town and it's more casual, it's just a 73 key Nord Stage 3. And that has some brilliant sounds on it. And but like a larger gig, I usually just put the Nord on top of the Rhodes. So I've got 2 Rhodes pianos, and that's really fun because as much as the digital stuff tries, there's always that extra 10%, and yeah, I mean, if I'm going all out, I'll bring 3 or 4 keyboards. So it'll be like a Rhodes, a Wurlitzer, the Nord on top is kind of the Swiss Army knife. And then I've got like a Leslie that I haul out sometimes, depending on how generous my bandmates are feeling and helping me move it. Because like, hey, you want to help me move a bookshelf full of books for this gig? But there's nothing like it. It's totally worth it. And yeah, but my favorite right now is probably like the Rhodes, the real Rhodes, and then some of the Hammond sounds on the Nord are really convincing. I actually just got a Hammond C3 gifted to me from Kevin Janza, who plays in the Cloverfold, which is really excellent. Local folk and bluegrass and songwriting vehicle. And he actually just gifted that to me a couple weeks ago, and I'm taking it up to Minneapolis, this place called Minnesota Organ Service. Richard Waring, check him out. He's like world-renowned organ tech, and he does these things called like chop jobs, where he takes Hammonds and basically cuts off the platform on the bottom but retains the case and switches out some of the internals, make them a little bit more stable, tunes them up. And the list of clients that he has is just astounding. So it'll be a hit in my pocketbook, but it'll totally be worth it.
So he's kind of taking like a chop shop, motorcycle type theory and putting it to that.
Sort of. Well, the Hammond, people loved the sound so much, but it was so immovable.
Right.
So a lot of people couldn't use the foot pedals, but they really liked the key bed sounds. So they started just like chopping the bottom off, taking the foot pedals off, because that's removable anyway. So they would chop the bottom off, put these big like roadcasters on the side, and then, have 2 or 3 people move it. And that was how you could get a real Hammond sound to a gig safely. And you wouldn't have to use those big sort of like furniture dollies to get it there. But yeah, so like Hammond chop is what they call it. And Richard, it looks amazing, the work that he's done. And he's done work on, like he built a Hammond for Prince and like Joey DeFrancesco and like Humphreys McGee, if you're into jam band stuff. The Eagles, he worked on their setup. So his pedigree for that is just amazing.
Say, he's got an okay resume.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I'm really looking forward to that, but it takes about 6 months to do that and overhaul it. And I'll probably start bringing that out soon as well. So
all right. Yeah. So how many keyboards total do you have? Normally I ask that question of somebody that plays guitar.
Yeah, I think I've got, with the Hammond, it would be 11 now.
Woo!
Yeah. So
and you still have a piano in the house?
No, I don't have a real piano
don't have
right
a real
now.
Piano.
Yeah, I have the piano I was raised on at my parents' house.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's pretty amazing once you start playing out as much as you can, especially with pianos. There's like a surplus of them, and then every so often someone's like, "Yeah, I got something that I think is pretty cool," and I typically just tell them, "Yeah, I'll take it, and I'll pay you whatever you want. I'm not going to sell it." And half the time they're just like, "Well, you could just have it," So
okay then.
Yeah, I end up with a pile of keyboards, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. So by the generosity of my friends and some of my family members, there's always people on the lookout for gear like that. And I think outside of the Nord and the first Rhodes I got, I've purchased 3 pianos, and I have just about 11 of them that are functional. So mostly gifts.
Yeah.
And they're pretty generous as long as you're like, well, I'm not going to like fix it up and shine it up and turn it around and sell it on Craigslist or something. It's like, no, I'm going to keep it and play it. And then usually they're like, oh, all right, well, if I'm contributing to some artistic process, you just have it. Yeah.
Works
so that's pretty
well.
Awesome.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Circling back to what you said, live composing.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of what you do is phenomenal. Do you do some composing too?
I haven't done a lot. Some of the albums that I played on is kind of like live composing. So I was part of a group named Hometown Glow for a while, and we put out 2 studio albums, and then Solfredo, and they had 2 studio albums, and then I was part of the Burlap Wolf King group, and they had
played with Levitt, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they just did the Levitt, but I had moved away before then. But that Bitter Honey album with the really gorgeous cover, and I played on that one, and sort of doing the improvisation and solos and live composing within the framework of other people's songs sort of scratches that itch for me. I had started doing some composing during COVID, and I had 3 or 4 tracks lined up. And the process, it was fun to collaborate, but I couldn't quite see the process through. There was a lot going on. My wife was essentially a traveling COVID ICU nurse, and then doing all this stuff remotely, and like sending tracks and waiting for them and getting them back, and then trying to import them and make them sound right. It wasn't quite the same process that I had enjoyed. So I do want to get back into composing, and there's a handful of select friends that have heard some of the rough tracks that I've done of like just my music. But a lot of those other albums were, with the exception of the Burlap Wolf King album, those were sort of collaborative composing. And I would come to the group with some progressions and some transitions, and then they would sort of fill in the blanks from there. So, yeah.
Has it surprised you how much collaboration there is between different groups? Or is that just natural when it comes to musicians?
It's pretty natural. Yeah, and if you approach it the right way, there's some people who guard their circles pretty tightly, and they have people that they're really comfortable playing with, and it never ceases to surprise me. And that's part of the fun of it is, you can learn something from any player at any point, even if it's a student. Usually they found some sort of core idea that they really enjoy or that resonated with them. And if you're paying attention, you can sort of use that in your own way or help them develop an idea. And yeah, it's a beautiful process. So like coming together of the minds. And I think that's the key, especially in the Midwest and even when we're traveling, because we lived in Seattle and Minneapolis and Asheville and Baltimore and Kansas City. And if you approach it with an open mindset like that, you'll find other people who are willing to collaborate. And yeah, it's a really beautiful process, and the community starts to show up. And, you know, you show up to a few jam sessions and play for free a couple times. You know, a lot of people have well, I don't play for free and I don't do this. But when you're in a new city, you don't really have a choice. And it's like, well, it's like a networking event. You play 2 or 3 songs for free and then, you know, meet some people, start collaborating, start getting calls for gigs. And what surprised me too was in terms of collaboration, in some of the other cities, there was players that were like miles beyond me. And I had even chat with them, especially in Seattle. Seattle had some incredible musicians. Asheville had incredible musicians. Minneapolis as well. But Seattle was some upper echelon players who were really well connected. And one of them that I met, he was a good friend, but after we had had a few drinks one night, I was telling him what was coming up and what gigs I would be playing, and he should come out and see a couple of them. He was kind of like, man, I think I've got like 2 gigs in the next 2 months. It's like, no one's calling me. I was
Wow.
like, really? Yeah. And then I spent a little bit more time with him, and it was sort of like, whoa, you know, I saw him at some gigs. He was really intense on stage and really kind of like type A. And you could see he would like get upset if a song wouldn't go quite right. And he would sort of throw off the balance of the stage. Not saying taking it too seriously, but taking sort of like taking himself a little bit too seriously. And it surprised me how much people, it seems cliche, but it's like people call other musicians that they enjoy playing with, versus if someone, you know, has chops for days or has the instrument figured out inside and out on like some just ridiculous level of proficiency. But if their mood isn't right at the gig or their mood on stage is a little bit funky, it kind of interferes with that whole process of combustion where you have the 3 or 4 minds all working at once. Because if someone kind of has a little bit of they don't quite have their sort of resonance chamber figured out in their head or in their body, everything that the other players are doing falls flat a little bit. And people can pick up on that. And they're like, well, that was really good. Maybe call for a studio session, but I'm not going to play with them 3 or 4 times a week because it wasn't really that enjoyable. Yeah. You know? So that's a big part of it, is just enjoying it and being an enjoyable player, and also just being able to like laugh stuff off on stage when things don't go quite right, or, you know, keeping that sort of conversational mindset is really important. So
you know, speaking of having fun, did I see you play one night with your nose?
Oh yeah, I ran out of fingers. Yeah. Yeah. And that was some of that stuff. Sometimes, you know, it's like you got guitarists who showboat and play behind their head and stuff like that. But I remember that particular one, especially with the organ. You know, you sort of like run out of, you're like, oh, I have an idea, but all my hands are like locked in, or all my fingers are locked into a certain chord. If I could just hit this one note, you're like, well, I guess I'll just lean over and use my nose and hold the note down. Yeah.
Not taking yourself too seriously then, huh?
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. And I think in that moment I was thinking about, because there are some Hammond players where they use little weights. So when you do sort of the sort of gospel breakdowns and there's this like really long held high note, there are some players who will just have like a little weight and they'll just set it on the keyboard, and then that'll hold like that
Giving
high
away
root
secrets
note.
now.
Yeah, and then they'll run around on the rest of the keyboard doing that. But it's like I didn't have any weights with me, so I guess my nose was the next best
thing.
Yeah.
Who's the person you would love to play with the most that you haven't, that you also think you would learn from?
Ooh. That's a good question.
I get in one per interview, and this one took the 28th minute. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. To me, I think one of my blind spots that I struggle with, just being raised in classical, is playing notes kind of on the grid, or like rhythms on the grid. So rhythmic players who have tons of rhythmic variation are really fascinating to me, because I'm kind of like, where does that come from? You know, you have all the drum rudiments and things like that. And I even went so far as like sitting at my desk at work and tapping out drum rudiments while I was on hold on the phone. I was doing desk job work. And so I guess any player who has like a strong rhythmic sense, but there's a lot of drummers I would love to jam with, just to sort of see what it feels like to be in the same room as some of those grooves. People like Questlove, or people Billy Martin from Medeski, Martin and Wood, and even some of the bassists like Robert Glasper's band, like Derek Hodge. And drummers are infinitely fascinating to me, because there's a pretty limited tone palette in terms of, you know, if you look at a piano that has a bunch of settings and synthesizers and all this stuff, it's like you have orchestra at your fingertips. The drummers have a couple sticks, and they can create such an infinite collection of sounds just by touch, but then also operating within this sort of rhythmic framework and keeping it all held together. So yeah, like drummers and bassists, any other rhythm section players. It's amazing. It's amazing seeing how creative that they can get with the tools that they're working with. And I'm big on creativity by limitation, has been sort of a big concept for me. So you start to narrow down your instrument, or maybe pick one sound that you're going to use for 3 or 4 songs straight, and see how far you can take it, or see how far you can like explore the corners, and some of the nuances will like reveal themselves after so long. And rhythmic variation is something I want to focus on a lot more. So at this point, it would be anyone who's in that sort of upper echelon of rhythm players. So yeah.
When you are not part of the arts and entertainment scene, what do you like to be entertained by?
Try to exercise as much as I can. Outdoors exercise, hiking.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole world to see, and that's probably that fire probably got lit in me after sitting in a practice room for so long.
Be.
The outside
Sunlight.
world. Yeah, exactly. So lots of hiking, kayaking. I try to, any sort of like outdoor, almost like Zen activity, where go on like a short hike and set up a hammock and just try to hang out and soak up the entire environment. I've been really big into sort of like meditation with a lowercase m, where it's more so just mindfulness, or just like perceiving your environment and trying to be knowledgeable how you're affecting the environment around you, or you're affecting even like the social fabric around you in certain social situations. And and I mean, in terms of, I just like seeing people have a good time at this point, you know? Yeah. So either outdoors or kind of just people watching. People participating.
Always.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Any other hobbies?
I do a lot of sound engineering, actually. So I'm kind of at like a journeyman level.
Okay.
So that's kind of how my parents convinced me to go to church for so long as I got to run the soundboard.
Right.
And they had this like big, awesome soundboard and all these microphones, and that was really fascinating.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I'm guessing then that you have gear acquisition syndrome.
I've managed to stay away from it a little bit. I did when I was younger.
Because you've got 11 keyboards.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of it was so prohibitively expensive. The stuff that I
True.
wanted, I was just
Oh,
like,
my.
oh, geez, you know, a couple $1,000s for a quality keyboard. And then something that sort of helped me along that process is, I don't remember who I was talking to, but we were working on some project and we're talking about buying tools. And he said something like, only buy the tools as you need them. You know, so it's like any true contractor or mechanic, they don't just have a warehouse full of tools.
Right.
They get the job and then they say, oh, well, I'm going to need this. And then they go out and grab that. So that's kind of been the philosophy that I've kept, where after so long, it's like, I'll probably need this for this gig. You know, so that's probably my excuse to have gear acquisition syndrome.
All right.
But I was a guitarist for a long time too, and that's really easy to fall into. Yeah, you start buying boutique pedals and like modifying amps. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, because I have it because of audio equipment. But most of those places are, you know, huge music stores.
Yeah.
And, you know, Guitar Center, Sweetwater, Musician's Friend, etc. And every time it gets to the guitar accessories section, it's like,
oh, yeah.
How many foot pedals you need?
Yeah, it's incredible. And they put so much brilliant engineering into such a little box, and it's like they're beautiful pieces of equipment, but then you look at some of the pedal boards, you're like, geez, there's like $8,000 worth of pedals on that pedal board. And they start searching for their tone, you know, and they probably have the same, maybe a little bit of the same philosophy or excuse maybe, where, oh, I need this tone for this song because I could just tell that this song will benefit from this tone. So I got to go out and grab that other pedal, and then that'll just be
philosophy
the last one
works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Alexander Olsen, appreciate you. First of all, your amazing talent on the keys and the fun thing that you have going with the Uncalculated Jazz Cooperative, and can't wait to see them playing once again at a place near you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
awesome.
That'll be a great time. But thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time to be on the Dave Holly Hour.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Yeah. And we'll be back with more in just a moment.
Comedy magician and hypnotist Jesse Moffat's right. He can't play the piano, but he can sure entertain crowds with his amazing magic and clever quips. His shows always make the participants the stars, especially when they've fallen asleep on stage. They've been hypnotized. Are you the party planner in your group? Then you owe it to your group to make the event magical, even if it puts you to sleep. Here's how.
For booking information, go to Jesse Moffitt Entertainment on Facebook. That's JESSEMOFFITT. Or call 605-929-0964.
Helping women feel empowered and confident is what Posh Boutique at the Bridges at 57th does, while supplying high-quality clothing that fits your lifestyle, personality, and price point. Whether you want comfy and cozy, casual attire, or something for a special occasion, Posh provides quality, selection, and value. They carry sizes extra small to 3X and have something appropriate for any age. Feel empowered and get confident. Posh Boutique at the Bridges at 57th.
Check out the new ceramic studio in Sioux Falls, conveniently located off Kiwanis Avenue on 5th Street. TJS Ceramics. Bisque, studio time, or finished custom items are available. Visit TJS Ceramics Studio in Sioux Falls today.
And now, more of the Dave Holly Hour.
Welcome back, everybody. You know what's coming out of my mouth, don't you? It's always a pleasure to talk Sioux Empire Arts and Entertainment, and double the pleasure today. This couple, well, they're young for one thing.
Oh, that's
and
sweet.
They're and they're on everything imaginable. I mean, the loaded question is, well, how are you guys? But that includes, personal things too.
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
But when it comes to just the activity and the arts that the two of you have, Matt Morrison, Amy Morrison, wow. I sit there and I look at my calendar of things that I just want to go and enjoy.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother calendar. Right?
Yeah, and well, true, because I see you and everything else too. Yeah. But then you're performing in between time, rehearsing and so forth. All right.
We have a fun overload around here.
Yes, that is for sure. Well, Matt, let's start with you because this is Thursday, and tonight you and I are actually in a show together, as it is the spring finale for not Good Night Theater, Midtown Coffee Radio Hour.
Yes, indeed.
Woo! Yeah, so we've got that going on at the Icon.
Yep.
And that was a fun place to play last time, wasn't it?
Well, and the thing that's been fun with that show is we've just watched it evolve from space to space and from show to show, and still feel like we're learning something every single time, but also feeling like we're gaining a lot of momentum and just a greater sense of what the show could be, and beginning to lean into some of our more creative inclinations, shall we say.
and I noticed that Sodak Music Magazine did a nice little piece. In fact, and now they're going to send a photographer for tonight's show.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, so
no pressure.
Be great. Yeah.
Try and look good.
Or you're going to wear your Jurassic Park shirt.
Yeah. Well, usually if I'm somewhere with Amy, I just dress as the accessory. So it's
true.
It's so weird. Dude, we don't have to match everywhere we go.
Well, here's what's funny is I had to change outfits today for this interview because I had taken my wife to her place of business, and it happens to be XL Chiropractors. They are one of the sponsors, one of the first sponsors of this show. And I had gone in, had my adjustment, and then I come out, and I always give her a kiss goodbye. And as I'm walking out the door, she says, "I don't like that outfit. You better change." And then one of her coworkers says, well, what's wrong with it? Well, it's not colorful enough. And she says, well, what's he got going on? Well, he's got an interview with a couple of people for his podcast. Oh, they won't. And I was about out the door, and I made the sharpest turnaround about when she said, oh, they won't care. I said, oh, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. We might care about color.
We might see somebody that has a very, I don't know if you have the largest closet, but you must have a large storage area for all your clothing.
We have had to live with separate closets for our entire marriage.
Okay.
And some people talk about being bed divorced or whatever, they have to sleep in separate beds. That's not our problem, but we do.
The closet, though.
We do have to have separate closets. And when our son moved out of our house, I may have taken over his closet as my off-season doesn't quite fit right now closet. So.
Well, it's always great, first of all, to see you guys in person, but then also anytime that, going through Facebook and the pictures that the two of you come out with are just fantastic. So colorful and so fun.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so that's always a pleasure. All right, so now tonight we've got the big show for Midtown Coffee Radio Hour, but that's not the end of it for you.
Now I've got one more show yet this spring.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a Road Trip Cabaret with Goodnight Theater Collective. I get to play bass for that.
Okay.
It's always a blast to be able to play backup for those shows, and the singers are always fantastic, and to be able to just accentuate what they do is always a treat. The band makeup for that one is a great group of players that I've worked with before as well, which is always a treat. And when it's playing with folks that you've done things with before too, there's that comfort level, there's that intuition that you develop with each other. And anytime that you have Eric Miller playing electric next to you, no one cares what you're doing.
True.
They're all listening to Eric, so there's zero pressure on me, which is really nice.
Well, what's ironic is they just performed Company. Great production. So wonderful. The only downfall I heard from anybody going out on the way was, sure missed the band.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, that one would have been a hard one to
You
pull
think
off.
it was hard to do with tracks.
Yes, yeah.
That was a very complicated show, yeah.
No doubt about that. Well, Amy, are you in the band this time as well?
I am not.
You're not?
My official role is to be the band leader for the Goodnight Theater Collective. But when Luke sent me the set list and said, okay, you can start getting your band together, I actually cried because I was under so much stress doing so many things. And so I wrote back to him and I said, I never say this, but I don't think I can do this. And Luke said, this is Luke Tachi, who is really our music director guru for all things Goodnight Theater Collective. And he said, I'll help you as much as you want. And then within 30 seconds, he sent me another message and he said, no, this is what I'm going to do. I am taking this away from you because I know you will not say no. My friends know me, it turns out.
Well, it wound up being actually a little bit of a win-win because the previous cabaret was someone else, Nick Jackson, our mutual friend, was supposed to play for that one, and Amy was supposed to play for the road trip one. And they realized that it actually worked better on all counts to swipe places there.
Yeah.
And actually, with that one being an animated cabaret and needing all kinds of sounds and all kinds of things like that, Amy was definitely the right fit. To
so many of those princess songs are songs I play during adolescent lessons all the time.
Yeah, so at the end of the season, everything works out well.
Yeah.
True, that's for sure. And we are coming to the end of the season, but it seems like the season never ends, especially for you guys. And we'll get to that in a bit. But well, what did you decide to do with your life, Amy?
I am in a major season of change in my life. Thank you for asking. So I ended my 16-year time at USF this week and am now, and I also ended teaching voice lessons out of my living room. And now I'm going to be opening a studio June 5th, which is coming up in 2.5 weeks, I believe, from today, and that's okay. I'm not hyperventilating or dying at all. It's fine. But it is the Effervescent Voice Academy, and my website is EFFmyvoice.com, fmyvoice.com. And I know, I'm hilarious. Everyone seems to enjoy it, and if you don't enjoy it, we're probably not the people for you anyway. So, but it is going to be a multi-teacher studio, and I will be training and mentoring young voice students to become voice teachers to help meet some of that demand for voice lessons in the Sioux Falls community. I could not be more excited about it, and I just can't see how it won't work. There are always people looking for lessons, and we want to make this a different experience in that it's not just one-on-one lessons. We'll offer group lessons and classes and workshops, and there'll be opportunities to sing together as, just for fun, to do rather than do recitals, we'll do like maybe keyboard karaoke night somewhere at a downtown spot of some sort. And we'll do, I don't know even what's going to happen. And so I'm open to all kinds of fun and new and fresh ideas in learning how to train singers. So theoretically, this is going to slow down my life. I will probably fill it with other things, but I will be teaching less and I will be mentoring more, and I will be able to take time off when I want to. So.
Yes. And speaking of that, I recall many, many years ago when I was at Kellow AM and interviewing some people from retired senior volunteer program. And they were going to have a workshop on owning your own business. And they had a previous one, and the gentleman told me, he says, yeah, we had a lady that said, oh, I can't wait to own my own business, so I only have to work half a day. And he says, you're right. You do get to choose which 12 hours you want to work. Oh, but I have the...
I know it'll be hard going in.
Well, yeah, but in the meantime, I think you stated it correctly that you can't see how it wouldn't work, because... That sounds fantastic, and especially when you have the call for so many people that are looking to get voice lessons, and you are fabulous at it, as I can actually attest.
Yes, this young man here took lessons from me for a summer. And
Yes.
can lay down a mean Mac the knife.
Oh,
So-
yeah, we always do Mac, no problem at all. That's the go-to. But what's great about it is, you're going to have your own studio now and so forth. Boy, that's got to feel refreshing, huh?
It's very exciting, and it'll be downtown, but not, you don't have to pay for parking. We have our own parking lot, so that's nice. And it's across from the courthouse, between the courthouse and the cathedral in North Minnesota there, between the Szechuan restaurant and the Come and Go.
Gotcha.
And, yeah, it's easy. If you can picture all of that, you know right where we are.
I think that there was at one time a lawyer in there. And
There is. And here's the fun fact I just discovered when we went over to tour the space this week and shoot some video. That lawyer happens to be a grandfather of one of my students.
Oh, my.
And his son, who I believe also shares the space, is my actual lawyer.
And we've made music with both of them.
And we have, yes.
Different settings.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
I think it's going to be a great fit over there.
Fun stuff.
And we get to decorate. Eventually, I had to hire someone to be my decorator because I do love colors so much, as you mentioned, that I told somebody yesterday, if we do it with my vision, it'll just turn into a preschool. And because I just have too much color and too many fun ideas, I need to know where to have neutrals and where to have open space, because clutter and patterns and lots of things. I do live by the philosophy of more is more.
Now, will this have a new piano in it? Or
It will have multiple digital pianos in it, and I am working together with Schmidt Music to take some of their overstock off of their hands as they are kind of closing the Shopper's Gallery. I guess they closed it because the building's gone now, right?
Yeah.
And actually bought my first piano there last week, and it was on it was like a floor model, and so I got a really good deal on it. And so I'm just kind of waiting for some last funding stuff to work itself out. And then, we may have to build it from the ground up, or we may get a loan from the bank. They haven't decided whether we're a worthy investment or not yet.
So that means that the piano you have in your living room that's been there for so many voice lessons stays?
It will stay.
Okay.
That piano has a beautiful history, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was the piano at the very first church that we served right out of college. It was it was an old the church. How long had it existed, Matt?
The church had been in existence over 125 years when we arrived.
In the late
90s.
Yes, and they were in a major growth spurt and needed to move out of their space, and they were building a new building, and it was far more contemporary, and they needed to figure out what to do with the piano, the grand piano, because there was a multi-purpose space, and they were going to put basketball hoops in there and stuff. And I was like, I don't feel good about that. So we had the piano appraised, and they sold it to me for under appraisal, and it has moved with us from then. Every place that we've moved, and it will continue to stay in our living room. But it holds a special piece of history in our heart.
Wow, that's great. What's it like to move it?
That is somebody else's job.
You hire that out.
Yes.
Yeah? Don't blame me on that. Okay, so then you are in a couple things. You are starting a new business. Are the White Squares going to be out and about this summer?
We will see. We don't have anything booked currently.
Okay.
And really just knowing that we don't know what Amy's life is going to look like with the startup of the studio. We're just going to take it easy. If things come our way, we'll appraise those on a case-by-case basis and see where we landed. We certainly haven't given up on doing Two White Squares at all. And at some point, I'm hoping, now that we've got a handful more original songs, would love to employ our son a little bit, who's an audio engineer, to do some recordings for us, because right now we really only have one thing that we've gone in studio to record ever, and it'd be nice to be able to track a few more of those things and to have those available. But we'll see when the time comes for that to all come into play. But it wouldn't surprise me if we get the opportunity to play front porch stage at the fair and some things like that later in the summer, where we'll probably have a little better idea of just how much it's going to take and how much attention it draws from Amy's more important work of getting things established.
All right, so you got the kids going too. You know, your daughter was in...
We are empty nesters.
And she's a doggy.
Yes.
Yes, and she was in the marching band, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, in a rather non-traditional
Yes,
role.
I was going to say.
Which fits Maya to a T.
Absolutely. So Maya was in the color guard at Lincoln High School, which was a huge deal, but Augie's marching band in its new form, it took a few decades off, and so it just reformed a few years ago, and they don't have a color guard yet. And so Maya said, I am never playing the flute again, I believe were her... is
pretty much a direct quote.
Translation of what she said. There may have been some swear words in there, but anyway, as a matter of fact, I needed to play the flute for church last Sunday, and she said, no, I sold it.
Oh.
I said, well, didn't we have 3? I sold them all.
Well, one was borrowed that had been returned.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, one was a gift.
Pawned in a different way.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is there are no flutes in the Morrison house anymore. And also I played bassoon with our bell choir at church on Sunday because, you know, they just didn't know what they were missing.
Right.
Anyway, they laughed at the idea. What were we talking about, Maya?
Yes.
Yes. So Maya played the bass in the marching band. And the band director said, we don't have a bass in the marching band. She goes, cool. So I can do that, right?
And he was trying to convince her
a little strong-willed.
Well, he was trying to convince her to play brass as well, and she, Maya says, "I've never played brass, and I'm not going to play brass. I'm going to play bass." And eventually, one out, and it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah. He goes, we don't have power running to the pit. She goes, well, I think if Lincoln High School can figure it out, probably we can figure it out, And at one time she literally...
Put the pressure on a college after a high school.
No big deal. She did one time, they played in a parking lot and she ran electricity for her amp out of her car. She had a hookup so that she could plug it into her car. She gently wedged her toe in the door and never removed it and just kept wedging and just kept wedging. Yep. So
and then did some other ensembles this spring and things like that, more like a rock band kind of setting.
She was actually put in a rock ensemble that's led by Jeremy Haig and got to play at our wine bar the week that we opened company. So we didn't get to go see her.
My.
But yeah, she's playing in a rock funk type ensemble. So.
That's great. Yeah, they got a few instructors over there at Augie.
Right.
They're okay.
Yeah, well, and Maya's such a good bass player too. I always tell people that if you're going to a good night show and you want the best Morrison bass player available, you need to ask Maya.
And in the meantime, Xander, he could be at every one of your shows, couldn't he?
Yep.
He could.
Yeah.
Yep.
How did he get started in that? Was that a push from
Mom
and Dad at all?
Well, I think for a while he honestly had a bit of a complex because he felt like because music or a musical instrument wasn't like his end-all be-all, that he wasn't really a part of the family.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I remember him saying that almost directly.
Okay.
And, but really what he discovered over time was that what really tripped his trigger was electronic dance music, and that as a genre. So he wound up spending a lot of time creating, it was one of those things where it's like he's in his bedroom with his headphones on for hours, days at a time, doing something. We don't know what it is, and then he comes out with a piece of music.
And he said, I dropped an album. It's on Spotify. Xander Morrison music, by the way. And we're like, oh, is that what you've been doing? So he's the quietest practicer we've ever heard. And his instrument is his computer. But, he really taught himself so many things. He was a student at New Tech High School, and he always had his headphones and his computer with him. And kids would be like, hey, what are you up to today? And he's like, you want to hear? And he was making sounds with freeware on the internet and learning how to create synthesized sounds and stuff. And so he went to DSU and studied what was it?
Digital Arts and Design with a digital sound design major.
Wow. He was a DAD, Digital Arts and Design dad major.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which I think is funny. He's got a dad degree. Yeah, and so now he is actually really quite fabulous. He works with Adam Ellsworth with Molten Audio quite frequently. He's got gig work with him, and Adam says, "I'd love to be able to keep him around before somebody else snatches him up."
Wow,
so
yeah.
So he does make us sound better. He's the guy. Yeah.
Okay, so he gets it in digital audio then.
Yeah.
But when it comes to engineering at a gig and so forth, you got all the buttons and everything moving around. So I have to ask you, does the young man have gas? Gear acquisition syndrome.
Oh.
His budget,
Mom shouldn't say this.
His budget will not allow for that at this stage of the game. Honestly, I think he's always been very responsible on that front, and so
we definitely have more of a problem with that than he does.
Well, yeah. Well, and the issue for us in acquiring gear is that oftentimes it's given to us or we win it.
Yes.
So if you have old musical gear that you want to just offload on the Morrisons.
Do you need a preamp? A mic preamp? It's in great condition.
I've been given 2 accordions, though, so there's that. But.
Well, that's something that when somebody gives that away,
I know.
That's a huge thing, isn't it?
Accordions, fur coats, and grand pianos. Incredibly expensive to acquire and impossible to get rid of. Yeah. No one will buy them from you. So you just give them away. And if you're an eccentric enough person, sometimes you get them given to you.
Yes, because Matt and I are both winners. We're recording this on the Zoom Live Track 8, which I won from a company, the same company that Matt Morrison won a guitar from.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've done all right then.
Yeah. Anytime you walk away with free gear, it's a good day.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and it's fun to have that, to be able to say it, first of all, but also, nice stuff too.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it was really nice because I've always had to lug an acoustic guitar between church and home and Two White Squares gigs and here, there, and everywhere. And now for me to have one that's a dedicated gigging guitar that I can just keep
and
at home.
And it's a little smaller.
It's a little smaller, so it's a little more convenient and really plays beautifully. So, very, very, very pleased with said acquisition.
All right. So earlier you mentioned that when it comes to Two White Squares, nothing booked yet for the summer, but you'll assess
open
things
to offers.
as things come along.
But we're not accurate. Yeah.
What about the bassoons?
Oh, okay. So our bassoon band was started by a woman named Lori Thomas, who was my bassoon instructor at USD in the early 90s. And she recently turned older than that. And I don't want to say it wrong. I can't remember. But anyway, it's the leadership of the group has been handed over to me, and because I'm spread so thin, I have neglected to get us gigs for the last 2 summers. So the not yet famous bassoon band is becoming less famous by the moment, I'm afraid.
Oh, one thing we need to talk about, Matt, because I just got one again. A turntable.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And I think I'm going to, you don't want to copy somebody, but when you post and you show what album you're listening to
sure.
and you post that on social media, I always get such a kick out of that. So, but I only have maybe a dozen albums right now. And most of it very old.
Sure.
And we just ran into, we were up in the Twin Cities over the weekend, and there were a couple of great antique stores that we found. So I got Kansas.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, I picked up, some Floyd Kramer piano stuff and some jazz albums and another Christmas set of, 36 tracks.
Right. Yeah.
So, and Carrie found some a few weeks ago here at an estate sale. So,
Very
found,
cool.
the best part was she found Glenn Campbell Greatest Hits.
Wow.
Because I had purchased in a bargain bin one time for $3 Glenn Campbell's Greatest Hits on CD. It was the worst sounding thing I'd ever heard. And it's like, oh man, I was so bummed because I actually got to interview him when he was in Sioux Falls that time to play with the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra for PBS.
Sure.
And it's like, man, I always wanted to have more of his stuff in, but she found it, so we are good. We're golden on that part.
One of my favorite cassettes when I was in high school was the greatest hits of the Beatles. And so there were some Beatles things that I really, really know, and others that I've never heard of.
Well, and ironically, it was a greatest hits from like their early
hits.
days.
Right.
Yeah. And I would listen to that to get amped up for swim meets when I would swim competitively. And the other one that I listened to was Bach's greatest hits. So
they both started with B.
Yeah. It was just that section of my cassette collection. I just pulled them out because they were in alphabetical order, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, one of my favorite amp up songs to swim really fast. So.
Yeah. Did it work?
Yeah.
Do we have some bragging?
I just hung in with swimming for a very long time.
Okay.
So I did hold some records, but mostly because I was just the oldest one on our community swim team. It wasn't a high school swim team, and I hung in there through my senior year. So yes, not only did I do show choir and jazz band and all of the plays and, band and choir and all of those things, I also was a swimmer year-round because we had an indoor pool in my hometown. So,
both of you from Sheldon, Iowa.
That is correct.
And for those that are maybe hearing about you for the first time, high school, even before high school,
No, we were high school sweethearts, but we've known each other since elementary school.
Yeah, okay. But it didn't take long, and of course the music.
Well, it was interesting because we don't remember when we met. My father and her mom and stepdad worked at the same community college, and so we wound up in a lot of same friend group kind of activities. Labor Day, Memorial Day, families get together for a cookout,
like a distant cousin, sort of.
Yeah. Really, that kind of vibe. The first time that we ever played music together.
There's some punchlines in there.
Yeah.
First time we ever played music together would have been junior high jazz band. That was the first time that we ever.
Yeah, Matt
made
played
music
trumpet
together.
and I played piano.
But the first time that
Not bassoon.
But it was even a few years after that I finally asked her out for the first time, and she shot me down. Because it was kind of like getting asked out by your cousin.
I mean, it really was.
There was that level of familiarity, and
yeah.
Eventually I wore her down, or she took pity on me, or something. And
he says he wore me down. I like to say he took a chance on the weird girl, because boy was I weird. You think I'm weird now? High school me had less filter, and I was still figuring myself out. But yeah.
But always a fun tale to hear about that. And then, USD, and then didn't we do some Northern Colorado stuff?
Yep, Northern Colorado for graduate school.
We got married at ages 19 and 20. Woo. And, so it was right after Matt's, he asked me to marry him right after high school graduation. I'm so sorry to all the parents whose kids are graduating right now. That sounds terrifying, but we knew. We had been 3 years into this relationship, and it was right.
And all that distant cousin stuff beforehand too, yeah.
It just, right, yeah. So it just seemed right. So.
Well, we know it's right because those of us that take in all the arts and entertainment around this community see you so often, and it's all in such great quality stuff, and quite often fun stuff too. Yeah. What's been the most fun? Let's go with the most fun gig you've had together.
I mean, I would probably go with Company, the show that we just wrapped up. It was the first time since we started dating that we were ever cast in the same show together,
right?
Let alone opposite each other. And so it was the first time that we actually had the opportunity to. It was nice for us to be able to know that that we had rehearsals to go to, and we were actually going to the same one
place. Yeah.
And it was such a unique mix.
What's on your calendar? Same as yours.
Yeah, such a unique mix of folks in that cast from different avenues of life that we've had experience with over the years, and just such a special group. No divas, no egos. Everyone just all on board and very
pulling
supportive
and doing their thing
and encouraging, and just a great experience top to bottom.
It was very fun, and it was hard, which it's the hard that makes it good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like Tom Hanks said in
League of Their Own.
Yep.
Of course, it's hard. It's the hard that makes it good. Yeah. If it was easy, anybody would do it.
Yeah. So, Amy, same answer for you then?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Playing on the stage at the Levitt last year was a fun adventure for the two of us as well. It was an intimidating audience simply because it was so big, but once we got rolling, it was just, they were just
doing your thing.
Our friends,
Yeah.
and it was really nice when Nancy Halverson said, I've known these guys for a long time because our kids went to elementary school together. How many of you people know these guys? And like, there was this huge cheer. And I thought, well, this is just our friends. Then it's way less scary that way.
All right. Individually then, what's been the most fun thing you've been in?
Ever in my whole entire life?
Yeah.
I might have to think about that because I do a lot of fun things. Can I think for a second?
Yes.
Do you know your answer?
Well, I think for me, Midtown Coffee Radio Hour it's such a unique setting, and a gift that I never would have asked for.
I know.
And it's just been such a joy to be a part of that, and especially being able to work with people that I love and just enjoy being around. That we have so much fun together, but also knowing that we do this on such a short turnaround.
Right.
When we prep for a good night show, if it's something like Company, we're 2.5 months. If it's something like a cabaret, it's a month and a half. And we do all of this outside of song selection in a week.
Yeah.
And it's just, it has a different kind of energy to it because of that, because we know, we're flying by the seat of our pants, but we also trust each other to bring our best to it.
Well, the thing that gets me, it was great being at Icon. It's going to be great being at Icon again tonight. But I miss Augie for one little thing, because of where I always sat on the stage at Augie.
Oh, sure.
I had a view of this panoramic view of everybody in the band. And I could look at each of you individually. I could look at everybody playing together and so forth. But my favorite part was always then I'd look back at Tyson playing on the drums.
He just always plays with so much joy, doesn't
and
he?
there'd just be this little wink. And that made me think of, Tom Hanks and, the Oneaters.
Was it Catch Me If You...
No. When they have the band that makes it big.
Yeah, That Thing You Do.
That Thing You Do,
That
yes.
one, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
When Steve Zahn's character looks back and goes, Sketch, how did we get here? So I always think of that. But, I mean, I sit there and I'm very lucky to be surrounded by the talent that I get to hear. And I've mentioned this to the band before many times. What I love about it is that there may be a song that when it was on the radio, I went, yeah, so what? And then when it's played live by you guys, it's just like, okay, I got to download that now. A song I didn't necessarily care for, and I was like, okay, I'm getting the meaning better.
Sure.
And it's just, it's such a joy to watch all of you.
Thanks.
Such a joy to watch both of you together. That was fun with Company, and then also, anytime you get to play together in the Good Night Band, or when you're playing as White Squares.
Yesterday for Mother's Day, my favorite, this last week for Mother's Day, it wasn't yesterday, my favorite gift was making music with our whole family at church.
Wow.
And man, it was great. It was a really wonderful spirit that was there, but it was also really quality, and it was awesome. And so that was really fun. I have my answer now to my best
all right.
Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
I think and I will always say that this was my favorite role too, but was playing Mary Poppins in Mitchell. And in Mitchell, the theater community just embraced me so wholeheartedly, and I had just a beautiful time getting to know some people there, getting to do some things that I might not have had an opportunity to do otherwise, because there are so many talented musicians in Sioux Falls. Not that there aren't talented ones in Mitchell as well, but they are also spread very thin. So getting to be practically perfect in every way, even though I maybe fell down twice during the production of that show, which was kind of hilarious. And the dancing was phenomenal, and the costumes were fun, and it was just really, really fun to play that role and pretend to be magical and perfect. So that's the one I'm going to say.
All right. And now for the final two questions.
Oh.
Answer number one quite often eliminates question number two. When you're not part of the arts and entertainment, what do you like to be entertained by, Matt?
Ooh. I mean, honestly, the main thing that I spend, I could give two answers. Anything sci-fi fantasy related. That would be
especially Star Wars.
Especially Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Or professional cycling, road racing. I've been a fan since the
you do a lot of cycling.
mid-late 80s,
Yeah.
and like I know that today we're halfway through the tour of Italy this year, and I like every day I'm watching coverage, I'm keeping up on, and that I obsess over that way too much.
All right, any other hobbies?
Music, cycling.
Yeah,
that's about all I have time for.
He fixes and repairs bikes.
That's
too.
true. Yeah.
I refer to it as my therapy. So there are times that people want to bring a bike to me and they're like, how much can I give you? It's like, if you want to pay me for my therapy, then perfectly fine with that.
I've had to pay for my therapy. All right, Amy. When not part of the arts and entertainment, what do you like to be entertained by?
It's terrible. Just TV. How boring of me. Hobby-wise, I like to sew and create fun things. Sometimes I'll just go on a whim and just start making purses or instrument cases or whatever. Usually I just get myself immersed in like some project of some sort. I like to do, creative projects, but I like hanging out with my friends and just having an evening out and being social with people, I think, is probably my favorite thing to do.
All right. Fantastic. Well, Matt and Amy Morrison, always a pleasure to have you here. Always a pleasure to be around anything that you guys are involved in. And tonight, Matt, to be involved with you in a production is always going to be great.
Come give all the laughs and big cheers with me on the front row. Woo girl.
You are the woo girl. But thank you both. Appreciate the time to be on the Dave Holly Hour.
Absolutely.
Thanks so
Dave.
much.
And we'll be back to wrap up the show in just a moment. Ladies, when it's time to give your nails some love, get that extra special treatment from Quality Nails on South Minnesota Avenue in Sioux Falls. Manicures and pedicures that look great and make you feel fantastic. Zaya and Tony provide professional care for your hands and feet, whether you just want the basics or an extra special look with added flair. Oh, and guys, it's okay to treat yourself too. Quality Nails. Call for an appointment. 605-334-1463.
Your time's up.
Thanks again to those great guests, Amy and Matt Morrison and Alexander Olsen. And of course, thank you for listening, downloading, sharing, and following on social media. And those cups of coffee. If you haven't so far, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. That automatically gets you entered for Pizza with a Podcaster. For all 180 episodes, you can go online, DaveHollyHour.com. As the Sioux Falls Arts Council says, together we art. As Arts South Dakota says, home is where the art is. As I say, put some art in your heart. Remember, I'm Dave Holly, and for me, every day is a holiday.
The Dave Holly Hour has been brought to you by TJS Ceramics, Posh Boutique, The Sky in Tea, Excel Chiropractic, Quality Nails, Jesse Moffitt Entertainment, and Sonny's Pizzeria. If you would like to contribute to the continued success of this podcast, simply buy Dave a cup of coffee. Go to DaveHollyHour.com and look for a coffee cup icon in the lower left. The Dave Holly Hour is produced in the Dipsy Doodle Studios by Big D Entertainment.
Thanks for listening.